Greetings, comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old, to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. And today, Whim City, or rather Interview City. Today we're talking with Erica Schultz, who has written many comics, and today we're talking about her latest indie offering, The Deadliest Bouquet. Hair is Veronica Laking really hard today. Erica is also a teacher at the Kubert School. Kubert, I've heard it both ways. It's so funny, we discussed how to pronounce it at the start, and in one ear and out the other. We chat about everything. We chat about The Deadliest Bouquet, having multiple projects on the go. We talk writing and have some interesting writing tips about world building and how to avoid self-inserts, and somehow end up on killer clowns. It's a fascinating discussion, so if you want to hear more about The Deadliest Bouquet, which has a Kickstarter that is currently ongoing at the time of this recording, which of course links down below, all of the links, or just listen to a discussion with an author about her methods and how she works with ideas, then stay tuned. It's interview time. Greetings, comic book lovers, and today we're doing something a little different. We have with us here Erica Schultz, and we're about to do an interview because she is launching a Kickstarter for her new upcoming book, The Deadliest Bouquet.
Hi, everybody.
So for those who may be new to hearing about the book, tell us a bit about it.
So in 1998, three estranged sisters trained by their Nazi hunting mom reunite to solve their mother's murder and try not to kill each other in the process.
So you've done work for everywhere. You've done Marvel, you've done DC, you've done indie, you've done absolutely everything. So what has the road been like to working on your own project?
I started out working on my own projects. The first comic book that came out under my name was M3, which was a 12-issue series with a Spanish artist named Vicente Alcazar. So, I mean, as a writer in comics, you kind of have to put out your own books to sort of get traction. Unless you're known in other areas. And the only other career I've had beyond working at a comic studio was working in advertising, and that wasn't any way going to help me. So, I mean, working in the indie field is pretty par for the course for me. But yeah, I got to write a Daredevil story for Marvel, which was a lot of fun. And I got to do a Hawkgirl short for DC with Sunny Lou. But for this, I mean, this is a story that's been kicking around in my head for a while. And we initially did have a publisher that was interested, but unfortunately COVID kind of, scuttled those plans. And I'm by no means the only person who had that happen to. So like respect to everybody who sort of had to pivot. But because the story had been, sitting in my head for so long and I had had a lot of false starts on it, I kind of felt like, this is the time to get it out there. My fantastic editor, James Emmett, sort of looked over all these, partial scripts and things like that, and really helped me find the through line for the story. And I thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So, I said, screw it, let's make this happen. And James has had a lot of really great success with Kickstarters in the past. So James is my, sort of guiding light on this.
So you said this idea has been kicking around your head for a while. So what's the inspiration for it?
Everybody asks me that, and honest to God, I have no idea where any of this stuff comes from. I don't. I was having a conversation with Liana Kangas, who's a fantastic artist and creator, and we were just talking, and I just sort of blurted it out. And what I tend to do is, I have notebooks. Like there's notebooks and pens in every single room of my house, because the strangest ideas will come to me and I'll just sort of write it down. And sometimes it'll actually turn into something. Sometimes it'll be just like a joke. Oh, that'd be a funny tweet kind of thing. But there was something there. And I tend to write a lot about family, whether it's found family or biological. And I thought that there was really something there with sort of this love-hate relationship that these sisters have for each other, as well as, this sort of very complex relationship that they had with their own mother. And I've been very open about talking about, when my dad passed in 2016, I had a very, complicated relationship with him and everything. And how I really started, thinking about the good, the bad, and how to sort of categorize the entire relationship as a whole, when balancing everything out, which is, I think, what a lot of people do. And so I thought a lot about that. I thought a lot about grief, loss. And this sort of, I think, came out of that, so obviously it's not a girl losing her father, but it's these three sisters losing their mother and having this sort of dysfunctional, complex relationship with their mom. And, dealing with the relationships between each other, the relationships with their mom, where their place is in this world, because they've had this sort of very unorthodox upbringing. And because of that, they have secrets. There are lies that they've told themselves. There's lies that they told other people. One of the three sisters sort of left home, had a husband, got a couple kids, and really does not want to deal with the past, does not want to unpack all the things that happened. Yet when mom died, she gets snapped back, and now she's juggling. I need to keep my husband and my kids at a distance because I don't want them to find out all the craziness, and it's mixed up with trauma, and it's mixed up with, a whole lot of stuff. It's, I don't want to sound like academic, but it's very complex. It's a very complex story.
Did you find it to be cathartic then, writing it?
I did actually, because it helped me process some of my own feelings, and I'm one of three as well. So it helped me process my own feelings. It helped me process my relationship with my brother and my sister, their relationship with my dad, all of our relationships with my dad. And it was sort of interesting because as I was writing some reactions that some of the sisters have, I was thinking, I remember actually doing that myself, or I didn't do that, but I wanted to. So, so there's a gallows humor for a lot of the sisters, and there's these three sisters, and when the final youngest sister shows up, she literally walks into the room and says, "Why you guys look so down? Would somebody die or something?" And that's such an inappropriate thing to say, but considering that is the minor of minor things from what these women have gone through, it doesn't even get acknowledged. It's just like, oh my God, you're here. So yeah, it was a very cathartic process. And I think that there's a lot of realism to it as well. Because it was me sort of healing while writing this.
No, I definitely liked the rawness of Violet. Like she came in and was very much like, bam, I'm here, cheetah print skirt and everything. Her outfit very much matched her personality.
Yes, Violet is very over the top. And you learn that it's not, she is who she is, but there is a softness to her that she doesn't show everybody. And we start seeing little bits and bobs of that. She is true to her word. And whether it's going to be her downfall or raise her up, she is true to her word. But she does, she is very complicated relationship with each of her sisters. And there's this very interesting dynamic between three. If you're one of three, you can kind of understand this sort of round robin of alliances, where when two are having an argument, the third is sort of hanging back and seeing, okay, who's going to win this? And whoever's going to look like they're winning, that's the side that I'm jumping on. And in sort of like a humorous way, it's about survival. But that's basically what these women have been going through since the day they were born, is this idea of survival. And that's what their mother taught them. When we were originally conceiving of this, it was going to be 3 story arcs. There was going to be the story arc of their grandparents who fought in World War II, fought for the French Resistance. And then Jasmine, their mother, who was born right at the end of the war, and who was then trained by her parents to then travel the world and find Nazis who escaped. And then, her disillusionment with that, coming to the United States, getting married, having these 3 daughters, and then tragedy striking again. And then her saying, I'm going to teach my girls how to defend themselves and how to be like I was, because that seems to be the only way, kind of thing, to borrow from the Mandalorian.
So I've seen in the write-ups and that there is a bit of a Charmed comparison taking place. So how do you feel about that comparison? Is it one that you invite? Are you happy with it?
I'm fine with it, to be honest. It's 3 sisters. There's no magic in this. It doesn't take place in San Francisco. And I think Charmed actually the TV show started in 1998. So I think So I think that does, that is a comparison. But I mean, and I'm totally fine with that, as long as people aren't being like, this thing sucks. Erica sucked at Charmed, and she really sucks at this. But there's no magic. There's no way to pull yourself out of this with a spell. And one of the reasons why I wanted to set it in 98 is because it is this murder mystery. And one thing that I find with some mysteries, is that it's really easy to solve everything when you have a computer in your pocket.
Yeah.
I wanted to draw the tension out. I wanted to allow things to take time. And it's really, and you see it sometimes in TV shows where it's like, oh, I'm just going to like take a photo with my phone and automatically get a hit on a fingerprint. I didn't want to go that route. It was too easy. I wanted there to be tension. I wanted there to be, did they or did they not? Like, who's the suspect list? Jasmine had a very sordid past as somebody from, somebody she assassinated years earlier, as the family member coming after her, like there's a whole, nobody's really innocent, so I wanted it to be a more long and drawn out. But also, I mean, I was in college in the 90s, and in 1998, I was, finishing my junior year, going into my senior year in college. And I fondly remember it. It was a great time for fashion. It was a great time, the combination of like grunge alternative to like pop. Music was very, very varied and everything. There was this weird sort of like, what's this Y2K thing? We're supposed to be, we're supposed to be afraid of it, but we don't know why we're supposed to be afraid of it. We have no idea what the hell it is, so there was that kind of like weird sort of vibe going on. It's a time that I remember fondly, and, putting it back then serves the story in terms of technology and such. So yeah, I figured, why not?
I grew up in the 90s, so it certainly is nostalgic. And like, I definitely remember the time before all the phones everywhere and everything like that. So I'm like, yes.
And there's even a moment in the second issue that between Poppy and Rose where they, Rose makes a comment that Poppy has a cell phone, and Rose makes a comment like, I can't believe you have one of those things, whereas now if somebody doesn't have a cell phone, it's, I can't believe you don't.
Exactly. It's like, how can they not have a phone?
Exactly. It's how can they not have a phone? How could they not have a smartphone? How could they not have, the, fill in the blank, whatever the hot new tech is that day. So I thought it was kind of an interesting thing to sort of flip on its head is, I can't believe you have one of those things, like, and, having to wait till 9 o'clock to be able to call somebody because you were literally counting your minutes. I remember I got a cell phone in December 1999 was the first time I had a cell phone, and it had a 201 number. And then I moved to Brooklyn. And I remember my roommate being so pissed because she could never call me from our house phone, because our house phone was a 718, and then calling to the 201. So you had to wait until after 9 o'clock to be able to, it was this whole like schedule thing that you had to like live your life by to be able to make a call on this, special thing, the special brick in your pocket,
It adds an interesting element because there's so many different ways to tell a story. So I do like that you've thought about the technological aspect, because the other thing when you're doing technology is that sometimes it's hard to think of everything because there's so much stuff that's always coming out all the time. So then when you do a really tech-based story, you always run the risk of someone being like, what about this new app that came out last week that can like solve all of the things? That's like, oh, well.
Exactly. It's like, well, you do know that like making comics takes time. You can't, it's not, you just don't snap your fingers and it appears. But yeah, like, that's why I think when you start thinking about tech, let's be honest, there's always going to be somebody on the internet who's going to be like, well, actually, I didn't want to give anybody that excuse. People are going to say it anyway. Oh, well, because, I was talking to Anthony and Doc on Capes on the Couch last night, and, we're all from Jersey, and they said, it says that the name of the town is North Jersey. And I was like, yeah, because it's literally based in where I grew up. I grew up in a town called Teaneck. There's something called Tri-Town, which is Teaneck, Englewood, and Hackensack. And the story takes place is sort of a melange of those three towns. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh, well, the street that North Jersey doesn't exist, but the street that the flower shop is on doesn't really look like it would be on Essex Street and Hackensack. And it's like, no, it's a combination of Main Street from Englewood, Cedar Lane from Teaneck, and Essex Street and Hackensack. Like, come on, guys. If you're really going to start picking apart the architecture and that's the only thing that you're really focusing on, then maybe the story isn't for you. I just want people to enjoy the story. I want people to connect with these characters. And even if they've never lost a parent, maybe they've lost somebody that they've cared about, we're going to see all the stages of grief. We're going to see how each one of these individual women deal with their grief. You would think that Poppy, who's the middle sister, would bring her family closer, bring her husband and her children closer. No, she pushes them away. Rose is trying to bring her sisters closer, as the oldest, and trying to sort of like rally the troops, like, I'm the oldest, I'm the responsible one, this, kind of thing. And Violet's just kind of like, I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to get to the bottom of this, put a knife in the heart of whoever did this, and then get on with my life. So they all have these sort of very, very focused ideals of what they want to get done. And that happens a lot when it comes to loss. Some people will sort of crumble. Other people are like, bitches get shit done. They're just like, I apologize if I'm not supposed to curse.
No, it's fine.
But it's like, other people are just like, okay, I need to make a checklist of all the things that I have to do and blah, 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 and get very sort of almost like mechanical about it, because that's the way that they deal with it. And everybody deals with everything in their own personal way. And we're going to see that. And we're going to see that even as different as these three women are, they do have similarities. They do have crossovers. Obviously, some are extremes more than the other, but they do love each other. Violet has a tattoo on her arm of a red poppy, a yellow rose, and a purple violet. And as much as she has this love-hate relationship with her sisters, if she really didn't care about her sisters, she wouldn't have marked herself, with that. She wouldn't have said, this is what I want to have. This is what I want to look at. This is what I want to remember, if they didn't mean something to her. And I think that as blustery as she is, and as sort of take charge and, devil may care, screw everybody as she is, she really does still genuinely care about her sisters.
So you mentioned that you have notebooks everywhere and that you're just taking notes all the time. So how can you
I have a whole stack right here that have already been used that are now rubber banded together. Yeah.
How can you tell when the idea is going to expand beyond just a bit of a blip? And at that point, what's the next step in the process to expanding it?
It depends. When I teach at the Kubert School, I teach that, stories, you can come at a story one of three ways. You can either start with a character, you can start with a plot, or you can start with a world. And depending on which, notion I have that I sort of jot down, I see how quickly I can add the other two. So if I start with this type of character, I think, okay, well, what world would they live in? What world is going to complement them, but also challenge them? What plot is going to be indicative of who they are, challenge who they are, who they think they are, who they want to be, who they think the world wants them to be, and then, work on who they are as a character. So depending on where it comes from, which one of those sort of three, I then try and build out from there. I'm working on so many projects simultaneously that what I tend to do is I'll jot something down and then I'll put it aside. And when I have a free moment, and I usually keep notebooks specifically for that. And when I have a free moment, I'll sit down and I'll look through the notebooks and I'll say, okay, this I can see, it's kind of intuitive. And I know that doesn't really help a lot of people, but I'll say, you know what, this is really too similar to that movie I saw on Netflix last week. That's probably where the idea came from, because I just saw that thing on Netflix. All right, still keep it in the notebook. Don't throw it away. but don't look to develop it because, you know, it's been done. So I tend to do that. And when I have a free moment, which seems to be less and less these days, I'll sort of just sit down and start going through stuff and say, okay, this is something I want. And I'll just type it into my laptop and be like, okay. And I literally just keep a file of, you know, notes from notebooks and write things down. There's a character that I really want to work with that I came up with a line, and this was several years ago. I just haven't found where this character is going to fit. But the line was this particular character talking to a younger person who is in the same line of work. And it's, you know, think like CIA, MI6 kind of thing. And the line was, let them believe the legend as long as you believe the truth. And the scenario behind this was this sort of young agent meets this older agent who's like, this legend is, oh, is it true that you did X, Y, and Z? And, you know, and the older agent isn't cagey, but very coy, and, you know, understands that the legend of them is definitely bigger than who they are. And what tends to happen is you can never really live up to this sort of legend of yourself. And that's why they say, let them believe the legend as long as you believe the truth, not allowing yourself to be caught up in everything. And I think that happens a lot with, you know, with any type of celebrity, and especially something with, you know, social media, how that's sort of been, you know, expanding people's celebrities and stuff. You know, basically buying your own hype. You know, and I think that's something that keeps me grounded, is this idea of like, you know, remember the truth, remember what really happened. And yeah, I mean, I joke around with people all the time, and people, oh, is it true that you did this? And I'll be like, yeah, you know, but I think you need to sort of keep yourself grounded, just in general, in life in general. But I mean, the past 16 months has been so crazy, you know, what is reality? What's time?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting couple of years, and it's still going. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how everything ends up shaping up at the end.
I'm like fixing my hair in my webcam now. Okay.
No, I'm doing the same thing. This constant like flipping it out of the eye kind of deal. So you have all of these different projects on the go, and your own work and your classes and everything. So what is your favorite thing to work on? Or do you enjoy being that busy and just flitting from thing to thing?
I would say that my favorite thing to work on is whatever's due first. I like hitting deadlines. I know that's so weird, but I like, you know, hitting a deadline and being satisfied with what I'm passing on to the editor. So, I mean, I'm working on the fourth chapter of Deadliest Bouquet, and I have the script almost done, but it's still not ready to send to James. You know, I try and lessen James's workload as much as possible. You know, I'll lessen his workload on actually reading my scripts, but then I'll like add to his workload, be like, so what do we do about this for the Kickstarter? Poor James, poor James. But so, you know, I literally have, you know, the script printed out right here in front of me. And I make a lot of analog notes. I mean, I love handwriting things. So I'll print it out and then make notes on it and then go back to the file and everything. But I like working on projects that challenge me. And this project definitely challenges me because I'm still dealing with my own grief and such, and then finding a way to articulate that, but to articulate it in a way that it's not somebody reads this, oh, this is Erica. It has to come from me, but also be true to the characters. Yeah. So I like being challenged. I would like to lessen my workload just a smidgen, especially now because we're getting to the end of the semester. So I'm like grading final papers and, you know, having to submit my grades and all this, and, you know, the last 2 sessions of the school, I kind of have an AMA with the students. It's kind of like, okay, especially the graduating ones. Okay, now let's go over anything that you feel that you didn't have, or that you didn't really understand from the entire year? And, what are you looking forward to? Let's try and answer those questions. So that's always, that's always a sort of interesting thing to see where their heads are at. Some of the students want to go directly into commercial work. Other students want to go into video games. Other students want to go into animation. Others want to go into doing their own creator-owned work. So I will try and answer every question possible. But I don't know everything. And I don't want them to know that I don't know everything. Because I kind of feel like if you tell them you don't know everything, then they're going to think you know nothing. But that's my own insecurity, but
When it came to the Deadliest Bouquet, did you already have a creative team in mind who you wanted to work with, or did it just kind of who came along kind of deal?
Well, Gab Contreras, who's the colorist, I had worked with her sort of tangentially on other creative endeavors, and she actually was one of the 3 colorists that we brought in to work on Strange Tales, which was the only other Kickstarter that I did with Claire Connolly. It was Gab Contreras, Liana Kangas, and Matt Emmons. Matt was my colorist on Forgotten Home, which was the series that I did with Comixology Originals. I get it's so incestuous. It's like 90210. Like I have my crew, and so I loved working with Gab. Fantastic work. Carola Borelli, I had been familiar with her work through Destiny New York, which was a series by Pat Shand. And I had done a short in the back of the OGN with Natasha Alterici, who was my cover artist on Forgotten Home. See, it's all coming full circle. I really enjoyed Carola's work. I thought it really nice, clean lines. And so I reached out and I said, are you available to do this? And when she was available, I was like, great, let's do this. Here's some scripts, go for it. One thing that, with comics, it's like making a sandwich. You've got the story idea, you've got the script, you've got the line art, you've got the color, you've got the lettering. You want to make sure that every extra piece is going to elevate it. So Carola takes my scripts and elevates them. Gab takes Carola's artwork, line work, and just brings it out. I'm lettering the book too, so I get sort of like a final cut on it. Hopefully I used to teach lettering as well, so hopefully the lettering looks good too and is readable. And then James comes out at the end and looks and says, okay, this is ready. And then you take a big bite. And hopefully everything meshes together. It's like a good BLT, Hopefully you get like a little bit of everything and it all tastes good and it all just sort of like, wow, this works.
I have to say, I'm fascinated by lettering. I feel like it's very much the bit unsung, hero bit of comic work, because it's one of those things where people tend not to notice it a lot unless something's gone wrong. It's very much like I used to do video editing. It was very much like that. It's like, what's going on? Why isn't it the way it's supposed to be? So what would you say would make for good lettering in a comic book?
It's exactly what you say. It's funny that you say that. My husband's a film and television editor. So yeah, we'll watch something and be like, oh, wow, they cut 2 frames too short, or, or I used to do lip sync animation. It's like, oh, the sync is off, so I'm totally with you on that. In terms of lettering, like you said, it is basically, if it's done poorly, it's noticeable. If it's not, and it just sort of flows, then it's done really well. It's one of the few jobs that, if you're not really noticed, then you've done your job well. There are certain things that letterers have to do in terms of to save a situation. I used to teach online lettering with a company called Comics Experience for a couple of years, and I did that. And I also make sure that my students, are brushed up on their lettering as well. But I think that, if you have a page that the flow of the art isn't really helping, they say that you should be able to follow a page without any letters. Then a letterer can actually help that by placement of balloons where the eye is going and leading you from panel to panel to panel. And it's basically sort of like a backwards S, as you're going through the page. I think that the letterer's job is to communicate the information as best as possible and to cover up the least amount of artwork. That can be really difficult if you have a very wordy book. And there are some concessions that you have to make that might not look so great, but you do what you have to do. I learned lettering as basically because I had a background in graphic design, and I learned lettering when I was working at a studio, and when I was doing M3, I said, okay, let's not hire a letterer. I can do the lettering. And I known Illustrator, which is the program you letter in. And I started lettering, and I look back at that lettering and I'm like, oh my God, that's the worst. I want to redo it. But I stopped myself from redoing it because it's like, it has its place. It's not fabulous. It doesn't look great. Sometimes the kerning gets to me. Sometimes the leading gets to me. Sometimes, having these little nubby little balloon tails gets to me, but I did it and it worked and it was functional. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. Now that I've, been lettering, I've gotten a style for it. I've, gotten more comfortable with it to the point where I was, qualified enough to teach it. That then allows me to sort of play a little more. Like with the lettering with this, you see a lot in the superhero books, sort of the caption boxes are all color coded, or they'll have the symbol of the character that they're talking, especially if it's like, the Justice League or, Avengers or something like that. So I did that with these sisters, where each sister has their own caption box, and it has a little symbol of their flower. So there's a yellow rose for Rose, and a red poppy for Poppy, and purple violet. And I put that in as like just a little nod to it. But I mean, everybody said, oh, that was a really great idea, because a lot of times when you're seeing people talk off camera, panel, they tend to repeat the name of the person that they're talking to, so you can see, so you can get in your head as a reader. And I didn't want to have to do that. I wanted to be able to be really just, oh, this is who they're talking to.
And have a more natural flow of dialogue that way, because nobody says people's names that much.
Well, have you ever seen Killer Klowns from Outer Space?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I love that movie. And the back and forth, Dave, Mike, Dave, Mike. That's what I always keep in my head. And I'm like, you can't say that constantly. Like, who talks like that?
Hey, Debbie, get her out of here. I'll draw detention.
No, Dave, don't. You'll all make it.
No, we can't, Debbie.
Stop it.
Get her out of here, Mike. Come on, Dad. What are you doing? Now, Mike.
I love that movie. It just abandons the love triangle halfway through, and it's amazing.
I know. And then you think, like, are Dave and Mike gonna get together? Because
I know, and then at the end, it's like, are they all together? Killer.
Yeah, it's like a throuple kind of thing. And I'm like, this might work out. Why not? I love that movie. I have it on Blu-ray. My best friend got it for me on Blu-ray.
I'm a big fan of like just B movies and stuff like that in general. There are some real gems in there if you're willing to accept them on their own terms and enjoy them for what they are.
Well, that's the thing, is like your suspension of disbelief has to be so huge, and you have to understand what you're walking into. Like, you don't walk into a Fast and Furious movie and expect realism. I mean, I'm not judging the films at all, but you don't walk into a Fast and Furious movie and be like, this is Citizen Kane. No, you know what you're going. You're there to see hot people, fast cars, and shit blow up.
Yes, and lots of speeches about family and how important it is.
And family. Dominic talking about family, whereas, if you're going to see like a more sort of like indie film at the Angelica, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be, proper, and this is going to be, kind of thing.
Brows up, kind of like.
Exactly. Pinkies out when you drink kind of thing. So, I mean, you need to sort of temper your expectations. And I think that, there's no one way to do anything. And everybody's going to put their own spin on it. And so, Killer Klowns, yes, it is by no means a cinematic masterpiece, but it is an enjoyable film.
It is.
And it's got some nice quotable lines and it makes me giggle. So,
and some genuinely terrifying clowns. Like whenever I see something they did, people are like, I love clowns. And I'm like, were you not there for killer clowns and other things?
I will genuinely say I do have some colorophobia, which is a fear of clowns. I remember God, I want to say it was like the second grade. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years, and it was so great because we were, it was the day that we were going to see Ringling Brothers at Madison Square Garden, and we didn't have to wear our uniforms. And we're talking about Punky Brewster years. So everybody had like a bandana around their arm or something like that. And I remember I was walking with my friend at the time, who's Chris Powers, who I think was my first boyfriend in kindergarten, boyfriend in kindergarten. And I couldn't find my bandana, and it had been in my pocket. And a clown came up behind me and saw it and sort of snatched it out of my pocket without me noticing. So, which makes me wonder if this clown's also a pickpocket. So I was looking around and I'm doing where is it? And Chris is looking around because he was, you had your buddies. And all of a sudden in my eye line, it gets dangled in front of me, and I go to grab it and it gets pulled back, and I turned around and there's a clown who's like, and it scared the ever living hell out of me. And I punched him, grabbed my bandana and ran because I didn't know what else to do. I was like 7. But from that day, I was like, oh my God, clowns terrify me. Then later on in high school, I had a friend who was in college at the time, and he was, for extra money, he would go to the children's hospital and dress up as a clown. And I had to know who he was before, like I had to know, okay, Ben, this isn't a clown, this is Ben behind makeup. Like I had to like rationalize
compartmentalize it.
Yeah, so I couldn't freak out. Like if I went to go pick him up from work or something, like I wasn't freaking myself out to being like, oh, you just let a clown in your car. No, it's Ben. He just happens to be wearing makeup.
It's so interesting. And those things end up, I find, working their way into works in fascinating ways. So what advice would you give to, like, say, an aspiring writer who wants to work a personal experience into a work, but doesn't want it to just be like, this is me, self-insert kind of deal?
I think you if it's an experience that you've already had, I think what you can do is you can sort of analyze your experience and say, how would I have dealt with this differently? Use some of the actual things that you've done in that, in your character, but also give your character another perspective on it. Because I think that's what distance sort of gives you. Distance gives you perspective. It gives you the opportunity to say, I should have done things differently, or that was straight up wrong, or, I should have taken so-and-so's advice kind of thing. So I think that you can do that, where you can still explore whatever the experience is, whether it's trauma or I mean, I always bring trauma up because trauma is drama and drama is story and, the academic, but, it could be any experience. Just try and see it from another angle. I think what happens a lot of times is a lot of writers tend to write themselves. And I'm reading a book right now on writing, and the author continually says, your characters are not you. Your characters are not you. And it's something to remember. I say that my characters are emotionally autobiographical. So a lot of times they go through similar emotions, but their actions, their external actions and reactions from those emotions are not what I did. So they make different choices than I do. So they can feel the same way, but what is it that they do with those feelings? How do they react and act and sort of externalize? The internal can be similar or even the same, but the external should be different. Otherwise, you're writing an autobiography, which is fine. If that's what you want to do, you could do that too. I mean, but get it in your head what you're going to do. Like, I don't ever want somebody to, people have said to me, oh, you're Violet. I'm like, actually, I'm not. But, Violet is what you perceive me to be because you see one side of me you know, in an interview or a podcast or social media or whatever. But, you know, there's a whole lot more that's there. And so I think that that's important, is sort of distancing yourself from the character by allowing them to externalize and externally experience things differently than you personally did.
Well, I think that people will enjoy getting that experience from the Deadliest Bouquet, because it certainly does explore those different aspects of loss. And I found that very fascinating and enjoyable. And I want to thank you so much for taking some time to come and chat with us about it today. I really appreciate it. Also, all of the tips and about writing. It was really, really fascinating. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me and taking the time. I know everybody's like crazy busy. So it's like, slot me in for 45 minutes, you know, kind of thing.
Well, before we end this, tell the people, like verbally, and I'll put links and all that fun stuff on the screen about where they can get Deadliest Bouquet.
Deadliest Bouquet, we are launching our Kickstarter on May 11th. You can follow at @deadly_bouquet on Twitter. You can follow me. It's Erica Schultz 42. Or on Instagram, I'm Erica Schultz Writes, WRITES. Or you can go to ericaschultzwrites.com and you can follow Deadly Bouquet through there. Or you can also go to the shop and you can pick up some of the other books that I've worked on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
You made it. Hi, welcome to the end. I hope that was as fascinating for you as it was for me, and you appreciated the foray into all the different areas, all the avenues, talking about writing, lettering, killer clowns. I love when something like that comes up randomly. It's great. If you're interested in the Deadliest Bouquet, of course, check out all of those links. And tell me all of your thoughts down below. Are any of you trying to work on comics? Were those tips helpful? I just want to hear all of your thoughts. So of course, as always, leave them down below. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to spend it discussing or, well, listening to talk about comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.